This is the DJI Mini 2. It is a small, compact, lightweight drone that can fold up and fit in your pocket. However, even though it's so small, you can get some incredible looking footage from this drone. So in this video, what we're gonna go through is what makes this drone so unique and why you'd pick this one over all the other ones that are on the market. All right, guys, let's get into it. Now, before we get into the video, I just wanna mention that there's a surprise for you at the end, so make sure you watch till the end of this video. So the key feature with this drone is that it's super small and portable. I mean, I literally did just put it in my pocket. So when you pull the drone out of the box for the first time, you'll notice that on the Mini 2, they actually included a strap that keeps the propellers from flapping around. Now that's nice because on the original Mini, you didn't have this strap, so these propellers would just kind of flop all over the place. You know, design-wise, it's almost identical. You have the same type of propellers. You have to use a little screwdriver to pull them on and off. Your battery and your card slots are on the back of the drone. But one thing that I've noticed that they changed was actually how the battery goes in and out. It's much easier to pull this battery out than the original Mini. Now, the key thing is that it's 249 grams. So depending on where you're at in the world, that's actually gonna be the determining factor whether you can fly or not because of local laws and regulations. And so definitely check with your local laws and regulations and see what you need to have to be able to fly your drone. But because it's 249 grams, that skirts the 250 grams, which in different places, that basically is the determining factor between whether you can fly a drone or not. So let's talk about the camera on this drone. So it's pretty much very similar to the original Mini. However, this one shoots 4K. So the original Mini only did 2.7K. The Mini 2 does up to 4K, 30 frames per second. So it's a 12 megapixel, a 1x2.3 inch sensor with an aperture of 2.8. And the field of view is 83 degrees, which converted to 35 millimeter equivalent is a 24 millimeter lens. Now, this camera is unique in that it has zooming capabilities. However, it's not a physical zoom, it's a digital zoom. Now, the resolutions that you get with this camera is in 4K, you get up to 30 frames per second. In 2.7K, it's up to 30 frames per second. But if you go down to 1080p, you can shoot up to 60. So if you want to get slow motion, you can put it in 1080p and be able to get some really good looking slow motion. I came up here in the trails and tested out the different resolutions, and the 1080 looks good. So you don't always have to shoot 4K. 4K obviously has its benefits, but if you want to slow down your footage, you can actually get some good looking slow-mo in the 1080p mode. So the bitrate that you get out of this camera is 100 megabytes, which when comparison to other drones that DJI's put out, this is very similar to the original DJI Mavic Air. That was a 4K 30, 100 megabytes camera, and this one is pretty much the same thing. So you can actually do a lot with the footage that you get out of this camera. I've been playing around with it in my color grading software, and I've been able to do some pretty cool color grades. However, you have to make sure that in camera, you're exposing properly, because the one downside to the Mavic Mini is that there's only one color profile. There's no D-Log in this camera, so you don't get a flat setting. Basically, what you shoot out of this camera is what you get. So when you're filming, you really have to pay attention to your highlights and your shadows and make sure that you're exposing properly for your image so that when you bring it back into your editing software, you have nothing too bright and nothing too dark. Because you can push this footage around, you can color grade it. However, if you lose data in the highlights or the shadows, you're not gonna really be able to pull that back. For me, when I've been working with it, I'll use the auto exposure and I'll put it to -0.3, -0.7, or -1, and then I lock in my exposure and I've been able to get some really cool looks. However, if you do wanna shoot manual, this drone allows you to shoot completely manual. So on the app in the lower right-hand corner, you can flip between auto and manual. In auto mode, you can use your exposure compensation to change the exposure and lock it in, or you can flip it to manual and set your ISO and your shutter speed to be able to completely control the image. However, when it comes to color, what you can do is manually dial in your white balance. And this is something I've been doing in different lighting situations, especially like a sunset. I've had to use the manual white balance because it doesn't always get it right on auto. One downside I've noticed though, in the app, you have to actually go into the menu in the upper right-hand corner, go into the camera to be able to change your white balance. I wish it would be down in the manual settings or somewhere in that area where you could just flip it on and off quickly. So something that's changed from the original Mini is you can now zoom in on your footage while you're flying. So in 4K mode, you can zoom in 2 times, and when you're shooting in 1080p, you can zoom in 4 times. Now, unfortunately, it's only a 12 megapixel camera. So when you push in, you're actually gonna be losing resolution. So I did a little test. Here's a side-by-side comparison. This is of the exact same shot. It's just some bushes, but on the left is shooting 4K with no zoom, and on the right is shooting 4K with the 2 times zoom, and I've flown backwards so that the frame is identical. Now here's what it looks like when you punch in 200%. You could clearly see that you're losing resolution, and the reason is it's a 12 megapixel camera. So the most amount of pixels that you're gonna get is 4,000 by 3,000. So you can't really punch in on 4,000 pixels and just make more pixels out of that. So essentially what's happening is you're doing a digital zoom, which in some scenarios might be fine, because if you're publishing to social media and resolution isn't the most important thing, this digital zoom actually does make sense. If you're wanting to get the most pixels and the most resolution out of every shot, then you're not gonna wanna use the digital zoom. But what's cool about using a zoom is that you can create some really cool parallax, and you can create different shots in camera rather than having to put it into an editing software and do a zoom that way. So if you're someone who does do a lot of social media style content, this is a quick way to be able to get some different looking footage and have that longer zoom lens. So effectively, a 24mm lens now becomes closer to a 50mm lens, which looks awesome when you're flying a drone. So what about automation features? Well, this drone has Quickshots built in. You get 5 of them. Now beyond that, there is no other automation, so you don't get any sort of active track in this drone, which is unfortunate because I would like to have active track, but I get it. It's a small compact drone. If you need more automation features, definitely you're gonna wanna get the DJI Mavic Air 2, which if you haven't seen my review on that drone, I'll put a link down below in the description so you guys can check that out. So I just wanna show you real quick what these 5 automations look like so you get a sense of what you get out of this camera. Now these are great if you want to just get a quick shot of the location that you're in and get a really cool movement without having to actually do anything on the controller. The beauty of this is you could be standing there on like a cliff and then be able to get a really cool shot that shows the entire surrounding, and you don't have to worry about flying. So the drone automatically does it for you. These are definitely geared towards being quick shots because when you start it, it starts recording, and when you stop it, it stops recording. So it gives you the perfect length that you then can take out of the DJI app and upload it to something like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and just have this quick shot that really shows the area that you're in, or that really gives you a cool look out of the drone. So photography on this drone, you only get a 12 megapixel camera, but for most situations, that is more than enough. You don't need 48 megapixels, you don't need 50 megapixels. It's definitely good if you're gonna blow up your images, but just for editing a few photos and putting them on social media, 12 megapixels is more than enough. Now you get some cool panoramic modes on the Mini 2. And so what it basically does is the drone will automatically move and take the photos. So you can do these photos that have much better resolution and show more of the scene. And they're super easy to use. You just get the drone up in the sky, turn on your panoramic, whichever one you want to do, and then the drone does the rest. Now, one other thing when it comes to the photography, in the Mini 2, you get JPEG and you get RAW. So if you are someone who wants to do more editing, then yes, you can use the raw images and be able to get a lot more out of these photos. Let's talk about the controller on this drone because it's different than the original Mavic Mini. Now the Mini 2, if you get the Fly More package, you actually get this carrying pouch. So it's a little bit different in that the original Mini, you came with like a hard case. So this is like a softer pouch. I actually like this better. It seems to fit in more things, like I just throw it in the top of my backpack. But with the Fly More package, you also get this charging brick, which charges all 3 of your batteries at once. And then also it can charge your other devices if you're out and about and you need some extra battery charge. There's a USB on the side. Now, the controller itself has changed. It looks identical to the Air 2. The only difference is now in here, instead of saying tripod mode, it says Cine mode. So they've changed the tripod to now Cine. However, this controller is identical, so it's actually much bigger than the drone now. The old controller was about half the size. One downside to this controller is that it's bigger and heavier. However, with this you get OcuSync and basically never gonna lose transmission to your drone. You can fly up to 10 kilometers away, which is 6 miles, and still have a clear transmission using this controller and the drone. Now, obviously you wanna fly within line of sight and you don't wanna be doing something that's against your local laws or regulations, but because of the transmission being so good, you actually never lose signal. The only time that you might lose signal is if you went behind something and then like it just lost complete line of sight between the controller and the drone. However, every time I've flown this thing, it's a perfect image the entire time. It never breaks up and it's just clean. So you get a 720p image on your phone, so it's HD, it's clear, you can see exactly what you're doing, and it looks great. Now for the controller itself, if you haven't seen the Air 2 controller, basically your phone just sits right here and your antenna is now this thing that's on top. You don't have these squiggly antennas that are falling all over the place. It's just a much better controller and it feels good because the grip on the back of it, it's good. Like, it works well, I like it. I just don't necessarily like the size, especially if you really want to be compact because it's so big in comparison to the drone. It would be cool if there was multiple controller options where you could use a super tiny controller and then also, you know, when you don't need something tiny, you take this one out. Now, in terms of obstacle avoidance, there really is none. The only sensors that this drone has is on the bottom of the drone, which senses the ground. Other than that, there's no sensors around the drone to determine whether you're gonna hit something or not. So one thing that I always wonder with such a tiny drone is how does it handle in wind? So with wind, it actually is a little bit better than the original Mini. It's a small drone, it's still not gonna be able to withstand major gusts of wind, but every time I've been flying, whether it's up here in the hills or down by the beach, even with a little breeze, I've had no issues flying this whatsoever. So depending on what kind of weather you're planning to fly in, unless it's something extreme, this drone's gonna work great. If you're gonna be flying in extreme weather, you probably wouldn't be using the Mini 2 anyways. You'd go for something like the Mavic 2 Pro or something like the P4P, which is built to withstand extreme wind. Now, I told you at the end of this video, I'm gonna have a surprise, and I'm actually giving away a DJI Mini 2. So I'll put a link down below in the description to where you can find out more details about this giveaway. And guys, let me know down in the comments why you want the DJI Mini 2 and what you would use it for if you were to get it. So personally, I think that this drone is awesome. You get a lot packed into such a small body and it just works well. When I'm out flying, I've been able to get some pretty amazing looking shots. Now for me, when I'm deciding which drone I'm gonna bring out with me, I'm now gonna decide between the Air 2 and the Mini 2 because the Mini 2 is so much smaller and I can still get such a good looking image out of it. The Air 2 definitely has more features. It has things like active track. However, if I don't need all of that, I'm just gonna take the Mini 2 with me because of its size and portability. So guys, let me know your thoughts about the Mini 2 down below in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. And guys, like I said, there is a giveaway for a Mini 2. The link will be down in the description, so make sure you don't miss that. Now, if you need things like active track and 4K 60 or the ability to zoom in 4K and not lose resolution, then I highly suggest you check out this video right here. This is all about the DJI Air 2, and this is one of my favorite drones to fly with. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next one.